Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Connor, I have just a few questions for you regarding rural water projects. And I know you and I discussed last year about how these projects are funded and priorities, how the dollars and funds are allocated. And when the tri-state delegation also met with you and Secretary Salazar, we talked about that as well. And you indicated that you'd be looking at prioritization of funds into the future and that you were working on a report that might be available that would talk about how in the future these funds would be allocated. How is that report coming?
That report is coming along. I have a draft with me that I need to look at. It's
good.
probably going to be about 30 to 60 days before we get it out in draft form. It will explain the criteria that we used in the 2012 funding process as well as the 2013 budget process, list those factors, identify it. And the reason why we're going to put it out in draft is we want to take feedback from those entities, those project sponsors, as long as the public in general before we finalize. So there's going to be an interactive process, and obviously if you or your staff would like to be briefed when it does come out, just so you know and want to respond, we'd be happy to do that.
Oh, that'd be great. You know, this is a big issue in our office. We have a large project that was authorized many years ago, and the funding has come forward from the state, and all the local communities have already prepaid that funding. The only funding that hasn't been followed through was on the federal government side of it. So the Lewis and Clark project is very critical to us and to this tri-state delegation. But can you tell me and give me some specifics in this draft form if you did put prioritization on clean drinking water projects, if they were prepayment by local communities, if it was what some of your priorities were?
Yeah, let me identify some of those criteria for you right now. So we had available cost share, and that was both the non-federal as well as the federal cost share. So we wanted to prioritize, and that's one where obviously Lewis Clark did very well. Urgent and compelling needs, that was based on existing water supply, water boil orders, if there had been violations that needed to be addressed, regional participation overall, and other economic factors with respect to the communities that are being served, water use efficiency, and Native American participation. Those were 5 to 6 criteria that we had as part of it. And there's some sub parts of that, but that's in general what we looked at.
What about completion of a project? You know, a project, how far along it is towards being completed. Did you give some prioritization of that?
We did, and that was part of what we looked at when we looked at cost share, both the non-federal and the federal. And then in a second part of the process, once we prioritized the projects, then we looked at the phases that we could get done. So our overall goal was not to just give a certain amount of money and not know how it would be expended. We are looking to try and complete phases or complete projects. So for instance, Minnewachuny, through this whole process, we are very close to finalizing that project from our authorizations, and so we've put a premium, and that project in particular has gotten the most money in the last 2 years.
Okay. Oh, that's great. And population served as well was a consideration?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Well, I certainly appreciate that. The Lewis and Clark project as well as Minnewachuny, but when you specifically talk about the Lewis and Clark project, that's been underway for about 20 years. And if we continue at the pace at to which we're funding it today, it could be many more decades before that's completed. So I appreciate that clarification, and I think a formula of prioritization is very critical going forward. So thank you. I look forward to working with you on that draft, and I'd love it if we could have an open communication on that and give feedback. My staff and I are very engaged on that.
Absolutely. We'd be happy to do it, and thank you for your advocacy for the Rural Water Program.